Welcome back to another episode of the HigherUp podcast. I'm your host, Michael Smoke, and today we're joined by a guest, someone that I've been a fan of for a few years now. He's amassed a following of over 1.5 million people across the social media platforms. He's the owner and founder of PRSPR Wellness, a holistic health and supplementation company, and he helps people every day not just treat their symptoms, but get to alleviate and ultimately cure the root cause of the symptoms that ail them. Mr. Justin Kelly, thanks for being here, man.
Man, grateful to be here, brother. This conversation is long overdue.
I
Um,
couldn't agree more.
Thank you. That's a heck of an intro. I've been a great fan of yours as well. Been following you since kind of your inception of HigherUp Wellness, and just to watch your growth over the past, it's only been about a year and a half, has been inspiring to me as well. So once again, thank you for having me.
Thank you, man. That means a lot coming from you. I imagine, I told you last night we were talking on the phone, I imagine there's a lot of people that follow both of us and they're already like, holy shit, they're talking, they're collaborating, this is awesome. So you need no introduction for many, but for those who maybe don't know you, can you tell me a little bit about your background and how you got started in this stuff? You posted a video the other day I thought was powerful, motivating people who may be going through it. And you talked about you had a kid very early on, and that was an adversity and a challenge, and you overcame that, and now you are a successful business owner who is, for all intents and purposes, thriving. So where did you start? Where does the story begin for you? And how did you get so into and so devoted to holistic health and wellness?
Um, that's a great question. I feel like life is kind of made up these pivotal moments, right? So when I can think back on what really made me passionate on the health and wellness side was probably watching my grandmother deteriorate. This happened in late high school. I think I was a junior in high school. And to make a long story short, she got sick that year. Didn't really know exactly what was going on with her. She ended up having a saddle block embolism, which, if you know anything about blood clots, that's pretty much, they call it the widowmaker. I mean, you have a, I think, 97% chance of not recovering from that. Um, she ended up recovering, and for as long, excuse me, for as long as I had known her, she always had some sort of health issue. She was crippled. She was our big mama, so a lot of people in our community just on the bigger side. We called her the butter queen. She cooked with, it was great, but everything had butter in it. Um, but it was always a struggle for her to get around. She lived in Indiana. Her house had a basement attic, and she couldn't go up and down those things very easily. Traveling was always a struggle, and she loved to come see us, but she only came in to see us probably twice a year, and we went to go see her once a year. So after that incident, she couldn't eat and wasn't very mobile. But with that happening, it was kind of a blessing in disguise because she lost um, close to 100 pounds during that 3 month span. Um, the sad part is, before she got that saddle block embolism, she was having some stomach pain. So um, after we rehabbed her, which I was a part of her rehab, so I think that's where I really started focusing. I always loved training. That I think that's where I first started seeing what vitamins and supplements can do in terms of just replenishing your B vitamins, what magnesium can do for muscle cramps and spasms and things that she struggled with. And we got her back to health. She was moving around, much better. She was able to go up and down her attic unassisted for the first time in years, which, she called me, we talk on a daily basis about that. Um, or checkup came 6 weeks later to kind of finally see what was plaguing her in her stomach, and she had pancreatic cancer. So after that whole battle, she negated to do chemo. It was just, after almost passing the year prior, she's like, I'm just gonna live out my life.
Yeah.
And she passed about a year later. So I always kind of think about that time, and ultimately God um, is the judge in terms of when He calls us home, right? But I wonder, how much more of life she could have enjoyed if she did not have those health issues. So that's kind of where the inception happened, and where the light bulb went off. It didn't happen until many more years later, until I started working in the supplement industry, that I wasn't the only person that had a loved one like that, and I wasn't the only person that had to experience that type of struggle and loss, where you love somebody and their habits just don't quite uh, they just don't quite live the life that you would want them to get to. And sometimes it's because they don't want to, and a lot of times it's because they just don't know how. They don't know where to start.
Yeah. I didn't know we shared a parallel like that, man. I lost my dad January of this year, but he got sick in May of last year was when things started to get a little weird, and it was a very similar tune. It was we didn't know what was wrong with him, but my dad was never overweight. He was always of a healthy weight, but he did not do any form of organized exercise outside of golf. He was
Mm,
born in the 50s, and generally people of that age, they don't have a lot of nutritional or dietary awareness because it's not commonplace back then like it is now. And he got sick. We didn't know what was wrong with him. And he just started to deteriorate. Rapid weight loss, severe sarcopenia, and come to
mm.
find out he had a massive blood clot, actually similar to your grandmother, but it was in his
Oh
portal
wow.
vein, the main vein that feeds blood to the liver.
Mm,
And they couldn't figure out what caused the clot. Question after question, diagnosed cirrhotic with liver failure, but never drank. They didn't get that. Turns out his liver was fine. So ultimately, it wasn't until he was bedbound about 10 days out from when he died that they suspected it is lymphoma that caused the clotting that was probably a
mm,
byproduct of smoking for 60 years. And man, I really share that sentiment with you of when you have loved ones that you care about so much and you wonder how much life they could have lived or what the quality of the end of that life could have been had they made different decisions years and decades ago because they accumulate. So I share that sentiment with you. I'm sorry for your loss. And he, just like your grandmother, when they figured out what it might be, he said, I'm tired. I don't want treatment. I don't want you to poke and prod me.
mm.
I'm ready. And, God called him home about 10 days later. So it's amazing when you talk about your story and those pivotal moments, how it can plant a seed and what that can teach you in terms of God's plan for your life is that ultimately, and you can feel the conviction in your content, right? When you make videos, you know what you're talking about, but you can also genuinely tell that you give a shit. And I didn't know where that came from until you just shared that. And I appreciate you sharing that because it's a little bit vulnerable, but I think people can feel that conviction through the screen when I talk or when you talk, and they don't necessarily always have to know where it's from, but there is no more powerful lesson in how important your health is than when you watch someone you care about deeply lose it. And as a result,
Hmm.
lose all of their autonomy. It's like my favorite quote ever is everybody's got a laundry list of problems until they have a health problem. And then they just have one problem.
One problem.
And
Exactly.
I'll never forget that. And I'll never, ever, I don't know if you, I'm sure we share this as well, man. Like I don't ever, my dad was my hero and an incredible man, like truly an incredible man. And I hold no resentment or anger toward him in my heart. But I remember thinking at many moments, I will do everything in my power to not put the people that care about me in this situation later in life. Because ultimately, I don't eat right and sleep well and train hard for me. Sure, it's great, but like I'm doing it for the people around me so that they don't have to get that phone call or that diagnosis one day, or at least limit the odds of that. So it's interesting that we share that parallel, and I can definitely see that come through in your videos and your conviction.
Exactly. I mean, and I'm sorry for your loss. I remember when you had talked about that originally, where when I saw the content I posted, it was, um, it didn't seem like it came about pretty sudden. So I know that how shocking that can be. Um, but once again, your resiliency and kind of your mind frame shift from, um, this isn't, happening to me. This is something that I can take and use to help empower others is once again just truly inspiring. So I
That's the
know it's still a
power
time of
of
healing, but
Yeah, that's the power of believing in God. I don't know how deep we'll get into faith and spirituality on this, but I know you're a God-fearing man, as am I, and that experience could have made me angry at God and question God, but in reality, someone that I was working with at the time, not a therapist, more of a coach, said, "What if all of the success and the story and how you help empower people with their health, what if this is a critical part of that story? What if the loss of somebody you care about helps you to empower more people?" And I think, people will say, well, that's just a way of looking at it to make yourself feel better. And sure, maybe it is. But at the same time, our willingness to share and talk about those things and the conviction we gain from it empowers our purpose. That at the end of the day, you can't argue with that. The proof is in your business, your social media, your success on the internet, and mine. So I think that God
Hmm.
places challenges in your life that you can ultimately use to glorify God and show what can be possible when you trust in Him and put your faith in Him, but also to do the same for others. So I really, really appreciate you sharing that, man. I had no idea. And
Oh,
that
absolutely.
was, you said years ago, the rehabilitation process with your grandmother, trying to get her a little better, her
Hmm.
falling ill again, was long before you took on the content creation and ultimately the supplement company. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. This was over a decade ago. So
Wow. How old are you?
I'm Unc status. I'm 30. I'll be 31 actually next month.
Bro, people call me Unc on the internet and I'm not even 28 yet. Everyone thinks I'm fucking
Oh
40.
man.
It's crazy. I'm like,
Oh,
dude,
if they think you're 40, then man, I've gotten like mid 40s.
yeah. I tell
Yeah,
people, look, I'm sorry, I didn't wear sunscreen enough when I was a kid playing outside. I should have worn more SPF. Maybe I wouldn't look 40, but I digress. I
exactly.
digress. Um, I'm always curious about this with people I talk to in the fitness space in terms of like daily non-negotiables. What does your day look like from a physical health standpoint? Like, what are the things in your day that you do every day that are non-negotiables? You know, for me, it's always morning sunlight, morning movement, cold exposure. Like those are the three things I
Hmm.
like to do to really like light me up and set my day on the right track. What does your day look like from, I guess, start to finish that you do every day that just makes you feel a certain way?
Um, the daily non-negotiables for me would probably be prayer, grounding. Those are kind of they're not one and the same. They're two. Grounding is the exercise of just finding my baseline. Prayer is what ignites that. Um, Exercise in some shape, way, or form. I'm definitely not, by my standard, anywhere near as active as I used to be, but I at least try to get 10,000 steps in every single day. Um, if I don't get a lift in, it's more so for my mental health, not for for aesthetics anymore. It's just
Yeah.
if I don't lift, it's a bad day for everybody. Um, and I would say those two, because it's funny, the past 2 years with my business growing, um, the things that I would spend hours on, I maybe have, you know, 45 minutes to do now. So I think right now, this journey in my life, I'm trying to find what quote unquote balance would be. But in terms of non-negotiables, those would be the main two,
Yeah.
10,000 steps, grounding and prayer. Um, I don't know if we can dive into this now, but I struggle with, you know, um, panic disorder, and I have it's all the whole list of anxieties I have. So
How
I
do you
can definitely
manage that?
tell, man. Prayer is definitely one of them. Grounding in terms of just all types of grounding techniques, but the two that I do is cold exposure and meditation or yoga are the two that I do on a daily basis. Um, but yeah, if I do not do those things, my day can kind of derail pretty quickly.
So you've noticed, it's interesting you say that. I don't necessarily struggle to the degree with those things that you do, but I always say that put all the but when people ask me about cold exposure, I say put all the buzz and the bullshit aside. The thing it absolutely helps me with is feeling better mentally. Like the
Hmm.
objective, we know based on bloods that have been drawn from people that the dopamine and epinephrine release is crazy from getting in cold water. And so
Exactly.
you found that to be a powerful tool to manage the anxiety and anxious tendencies.
That, and it brings you back to your present moment.
Yeah.
There's nothing that, that puts you right where you need to be than, shocking your body in
Yeah.
a relatively safe manner. I mean, if you're in shape, you're not gonna, untimely pass in a cold tub. But
Yeah.
it for me, that I think that, and then also um, adding some type of adaptive stress to your body early in the morning makes all the other stressors that you're going to go through later on the day seem less substantial.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that does that for me as well.
Yeah, I used to joke when I was still in corporate, like when I start my day with a cold plunge and a lift or a run, my Outlook calendar is my bitch. It's like
Right.
you're not gonna stress me out on a phone call. I've already been way more stressed than I could possibly be talking to you with 45-degree water. And it's one of
Exactly.
those things you can't really like my grandpa used to say, I can explain it to you, but I can't understand it for you. You got to get
Hmm.
people to do it and get in it to understand what you mean by that. But there really is, whether it's the mental sense of victory of starting your day with something that is objectively really shitty. I hate cold exposure. People think I like it. It's miserable. I hate it every day, but it does make everything just a little bit easier. And that makes it worth doing. 3 minutes of suffering for 12 hours of bliss. Count me in.
Exactly. And one of my favorite quotes is, experience is our best teacher, but she's, not always the kindest. So,
Yeah.
kind of piggybacks off your point, you have to get in there and do it at the end of the day.
You said something in a video. This is on a different note, but I'm so curious about it. It blew my mind when you said this. 50 to 60% of your child's epigenetic expression comes from the man. Your child's health is directly correlated to your health. And we just talked earlier about the
Hmm.
importance of being healthy for your loved ones. You're a father, I know that. And I want to be healthy for my kids. And I talk about, like, when you have kids, show up and be healthy for them when they're there. But that statement right there says that the health of your child is directly impacted by how you live before the child is ever conceived. So, can you talk a little bit about, well, first off, what the hell is epigenetic expression? The average person is not going to know what that is. I'm not even sure I know what it is completely. And why it's so important to take care of yourself, not only if you have kids, but if you want to continue to have kids.
Sure. So, let's kind of start the definition. Epigenetic expression is basically um, your gene activity without altering your DNA sequence itself. So, basically, your mindset, nutrition, stress, sleep, can all turn genes on and off without, you know, without basically dimming the lights or changing the wiring of your epigenetic expression. So there's your DNA versus your destiny. Basically, we might inherit genes that it can express um, our outputs as human beings, and those are just things that are. It doesn't mean you're doomed, but those are things that we are born with, and that
Yeah.
are it's passed down through family lineage. Our epigenetic markers are chemicals or methyl groups in your DNA. So that basically influences genes of how you behave, whether they're activated, silenced, somewhere in between, are basically due to DNA methylation and non-coding RNA regulation. So besides all that jargon, it basically means
It means
your
your
habits,
genetics load
nutrition,
the
your
gun,
environment.
but your lifestyle pulls the trigger, right?
Exactly. Your habits, your nutrition, your environment all can change that expression. And 60% that is makes up half of basically what you're destined for versus what you prepare for. Um, I think I try to make things as simple as possible. I think that is the simplest way to explain it is, you know, more than half of what we experience in our lifetimes, or what we pass down to our children, is behaved and not destined. There are those outliers, of course, which people are going to hop in and say, oh, I was born with XYZ. That may be true, but even when doctors tell you, well, this is genetic, let's look at metabolic diseases, for example. They'll say things like high cholesterol or obesity is genetic. Well, if 3 generations before you had bad eating habits and were inactive, there's a good chance that those genes are, for one, expressed through birth. They were inactive and they ate unhealthy while you were in the womb. And then the first 5 years of your life is when the child's brain is developing the most. So you gain all those. There wasn't. There's odds are there's not going to be a dramatic life change after the baby, so all that's taught. So yes, if you're obese by the age of 10, 12, 13, 14, you have years of behaviors that's taught that tie into that DNA. So I think I don't particularly like when medical professionals use the word, it's genetic, because we've been taught in previous, just through high school, that genetic is just all passed down through the DNA and nothing that we do behaviorally, and that's not 100% true.
Yeah. I think people think they're at the mercy of their lineage when in reality your behaviors can trigger. Yeah, you may be predetermined for a higher likelihood of something, but how you choose to live throughout the course of your life will determine if those epigenetic switches get turned on, right? How they express as a result of you have a version of you with a set genome and a set code of DNA that sleeps 8 hours, lifts heavy weights, gets sunlight, takes vitamin D, magnesium, and walks. And then you have a version of you with the same set that sleeps 5 hours a night, drinks alcohol, smokes weed regularly, doesn't go outside, and carries 80 pounds of fat for the course of your life. The expressions of those human beings are going to be rapidly different, though they were born with the same deck of cards, right?
Exactly.
That's fascinating, dude. I heard that one from somebody once that your mitochondrial density or the resilience of your mitochondria is also passed down through, I think, the mother, and that's very in the weeds for the listener. But basically,
Hmm.
if we were to build a resilient body at a cellular level, our mitochondria are more resilient through endurance exercise, hard training. Thereby, your likelihood of giving birth to a more resilient child is of a higher chance. I mean, that's just, so it almost makes me think like when you hear about kids of pro athletes that also become pro athletes, it's like, was it because the parents were gifted or because they built hella mitochondrial density and had awesome genome expression? Like it's just so fascinating to me how deep this stuff really goes when it comes to birth and life on Earth.
It really is, and to my knowledge, I don't think they've studied, like, like I said, children of athletes that turn into pro athletes. But if you look at just, I think it's a little bit, it's with those types of individuals. I think it's a little bit of both, right? You have epigenetic background. But then also, if you're a child or a professional athlete, most of the times they were still playing, or you took them to camp with you. Like, all those behaviors were also taught. So it's just you hit the lottery in terms of lifestyle and gene pool,
Yeah.
um, which I've noticed. I went to school with a few individuals that play professional sports, and their parents play professional sports, and it's their household is just, the mindset's completely different because it's exposure. Um, you could say the same with any, uh, I guess, profession or lifestyle, good or bad. I'm a third generation business owner. I have been exposed to different things, whereas to someone who is starting out a business from scratch with no reference point isn't going to have. So, I grew up going to work with my father, understanding what, working for yourself looked like, understanding what long hours looked like, understanding, how to balance a checkbook, understanding just a lot of different things that was just shown. I quite maybe not didn't understand at the time, but it was I was exposed to it, and I think that plays a big part.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've never thought about it that way. I was a sales major in college. I graduated with a degree in professional selling, which is focused on communication psychology and the art of persuasion, the soft science of selling, as they called it. And I
Explains a lot.
that tracks, as some would say. And I use those
I
skills
feel like
today.
I feel like you could sell water to a sailboat.
Yeah, as a rise. Yeah, exactly. So ice to an Eskimo. And the program taught me a lot. In my corporate experience, I was very successful in sales from an early age. But then you just saying that about your father, like my dad growing up was always in sales from the time I was born
Hmm.
to the time he passed, right? He was on the phone when he was borderline bedbound, still closing deals. He closed the
Oh man.
biggest job of his career while he was the sickest he had ever been. And that was crazy. But I remember growing up, like what my idea of work was he would pick up the phone and say like, "What's up, you degenerate?" or "What's up, knucklehead?" and just shoot the shit with these people and then hang up. And I go, "Who is that?" He goes, "A customer of mine." And so
Hmm.
that connection with people, that early on what work is, was imprinted on me very, very early. And that art of how he connects with people was imprinted on me very, very early. So that makes sense. That's like almost a form of genetic expression.
Correct.
It's crazy. That's so crazy. I want to shift gears a little bit. This is the stuff I really want to learn from you on, man, because we talk about practical in our content a lot. We talk about the big
Hmm.
rocks, the things you need to knock out. And at this point, the people who listen to this show understand what matters most, which is solid diet, solid movement, solid recovery. But now that we've talked a little bit about practical, I want to learn a little bit more about optimal from you. So I've got a couple of different things I want to cover, like some rapid fire stuff around
Okay.
supplementation in the realm of focus, energy, and then like fat loss and mental health. And those are the three
Okay.
things I've heard you talk about a lot. First thing I want to ask, because we share a love for this supplement, L-theanine. What do you love about it?
Man. Um, it's one of those multifunctional herbs slash amino acids because they draw it from green tea. So um, I think it's the ability to produce alpha brainwave activity. Uh, you can also pair a stimulant with it, which just heightens the effects of the focus aspect. And I think also for someone who struggle with anxiety, its anti-anxiety properties are equally as strong, and it's also able to quiet down the forebrain, which is kind of the main center for intrusive thought. So I think that because it's such a powerful multi-purpose supplement, um, most individuals can benefit from it, whether you're young, old, in between, and it's not going to cost you a fortune.
Yeah, it's so cost effective, and I love to take it in the morning with caffeine. I did this morning, like you said, it
Yeah.
it pares down the negative effects of stimulants, that jittery, anxious feeling, and just
Hmm.
sort of aims it into a calm focus. So I do a 1-to-1 dose. If I have 100 megs of caffeine, I'll have 100 megs of L-theanine and feel great. And then higher dosages before bed, like 300 to 500 milligrams before bed, I find just really helps to put me out. You actually have a funny video that's very viral, and it's like you've got all that chatter in the background. You pop the L-theanine and it quiets down. It's
Yeah.
such a good way to explain how it works, dude. I love that supplement, and it's incredibly cost effective to your point. So I wanted to ask you about that because I know a lot of people struggle with anxiety or intrusive thought, but also in the morning, it can be effective for increasing productivity. It's an incredible dual purpose supplement.
Correct.
I
Yeah,
want to
I would
also
implore
ask,
most people to try it if they
yeah,
have not.
100%. You had a video on weight loss supplements recently, which some people are going to be like, what the fuck do you mean weight loss supplements? I thought you can't lose weight without a caloric deficit. And in that video, you highlight none of this matters without a caloric deficit. So to everyone listening, I want to be very clear. None of this matters
Mhm.
without a caloric deficit. But you said some interesting stuff about three supplements: L-tyrosine, berberine, and omega-3s in regards to aiding in the process of losing body fat. So why those three, and how much of those should you be taking? Let's start with L-tyrosine, and then we'll move to berberine and omegas.
Okay. L-tyrosine has the ability to kind of help with hunger markers. It also helps increase focus and can help with some slight, uh, I know you hate this word, metabolism enhancement. um, Recommended dosages are between 500 to 1,000 milligrams daily. It also can help increase, norepinephrine and other neurotransmitters, which basically can, like I said earlier, just help with your hunger response. And
Yeah.
that is one of the issues with people that have problems with emotional eating. Weight loss has several different caveats in terms of weight loss and weight gain in terms of why you can't lose weight. So if you are an emotional eater, um, L-tyrosine could be something that could be very beneficial in terms of curbing those cravings. Um, I think in terms of weight loss, that is one of the main benefits of it. Uh, Omega threes, your anti-inflammatory response is critical when we're talking about blood sugar control. So omega threes helps with full body inflammation, but if you're also able to control the inflammation in your body, you're able to help with your blood sugar markers and insulin spikes, which are makes weight loss harder in a
Mm-hmm.
sense. Um, the last one, berberine, I know that's kind of been a buzzword for the past year, but it is a GLP-1 agonist. It can help curb appetite altogether. Some of the feedback that I've gotten from people that have tried berberine is, it kind of gives them a nauseated feeling. Try any other GLP-1 agonist, that's essentially the function. That's what it does. It makes you not hungry. You can What I've told people is though sorry, going back, a recommended dosage in the studies that we've seen was 500 milligrams three times a day, so 1,500 milligrams total daily. as when it's been shown to be effective and can help with weight loss. And paired, when you said with the caloric deficit they've seen, I think it was, and don't quote me, but I believe it was 2 to 3 pounds weekly over
Wow.
I think it was over a two month span in the study. Um, and but I wouldn't go directly into taking 1,500 milligrams just to kind of curb that nauseated feeling. I would start at 500 milligrams per week. Next week, do 1,000. Third week is when you're taking the full dose. And typically, with most nutraceuticals, it takes about 21 to 24 days to reach full saturation in the blood, anyways. So at that time, you'll be taking the full dosage as it's starting to be fully saturated in the blood and really take full effect.
That's a super, super cool note of the neurotransmitter production coming from L-tyrosine. It's when you understand what's happening to you at a physiological or neurological level when you're emotionally eating or you're chronically hungry, and you have that awareness, you can combat it with stuff like this. So it's similarly the way that amphetamines or Adderall can make people not hungry. When your dopamine and your epinephrine are elevated, your appetite is suppressed. And so
Hmm.
if L-tyrosine can upregulate the production of those neurotransmitters, epinephrine, dopamine, not only is it helpful, I've found for me as someone who's ADHD and refuses to take that shit anymore because it made me feel awful, Adderall, L-tyrosine helps a lot with that. Like I took tyrosine this morning and I feel fantastic. And I woke up at 5 a.m. It's 12:15. I'm still fasted and I don't really have an appetite right now. Part of that's the caffeine. It's an appetite suppressant. But
Hmm.
the berberine and the omega-3s in regard to the blood sugar spikes you mentioned, the up and down of the blood glucose not only can fuck with your energy levels. When the blood glucose goes low, the body goes eat, but it doesn't necessarily mean you
Right.
physiologically need the
Need to.
calories.
It's just
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So people toss around that buzzword of insulin resistance and insulin sensitivity, but in reality, generally, if your blood glucose is relatively stable throughout the day, your appetite is going to be more stable as well. All of these things to say, thereby making the caloric deficit easier to adhere to. Correct?
Exactly.
Bingo. Let's talk focus. You and I also share a love of a wonderful supplement called magnesium. I have
Yes.
two supplements that I have in this stack that I take. Well, three, I guess. Caffeine is a given. I take magnesium threonate. I know you have an offer a glycinate. I've taken both. I
Hmm.
love both. And there's one in here that I've heard you talk about called Guarana, and I'm not familiar with it. So mag threonate I take every evening, and I feel sharper in the mornings when I take it regularly. I take caffeine every day for focus, but you mentioned Guarana is something that's worth considering. So, what are your thoughts on the stack of caffeine, magnesium, and Guarana for focus? And what the hell is Guarana?
So guarana actually is it's a tree you can actually find. It's mostly in South America, but it's a natural source of caffeine. A lot of energy drink companies have actually moved to guarana as opposed to caffeine anhydrous because it's just a more sustainable form of caffeine, and the metabolization of that caffeine isn't quite like jet fuel. Your body, it's more of an ease in terms of how it works in your body throughout the day. So I'd actually use guarana, probably a magnesium threonate, and L-theanine as opposed to using caffeine. If you did caffeine and guarana, you'd be you'd be up for
Yeah.
a minute. Um, but I it's been taken in and out of certain. I've been in the supplement industry for a while, so they used to be kind of like their base stimulant after the whole after the whole I guess ephedra craze. I don't know how long you've been taking supplements, but there was the hydroxycuts and oxypros and all those that used essentially ephedra as the main stimulant. Well, that got banned due to some untimely passings. So they moved to using guarana, and that worked for quite some time. And I still think it's one of um, those herbs that, if taken in the right dosing, can be very beneficial. And your need for caffeine, it's still it's still a caffeinated product. Let me get that straight. But your need for caffeine anhydrous or several different types of caffeine sources throughout the day diminishes rapidly.
Yeah, in one of your videos, you reviewed the NutriCost Guarana, and it was 1,000 milligrams of Guarana, but inside of that yielded 220 milligrams of caffeine. So, like, you wouldn't
Hmm.
need to pair Guarana with a coffee unless you were trying to really tweak out, because that's
Yeah,
highly,
and
highly stimulating.
the scoop is like a half a gram scoop. It's that big, so it's something that a little goes a long way, and it's very
hmm
potent.
When it comes to getting the most out of your focus and productivity, is there anything you would particularly use? Maybe not every single day, but acutely, if you have like a heavy cognitive load day, is there a supplement you like to add to your focus stack, if you will?
Well, that's a great question. Um, I'll probably so I take the glycinate. I'll probably incorporate an L-theanine um, along with either ginkgo biloba. Some people kind of tend to have headaches. I get them here and there with ginkgo. Huperzine A is another one. Probably the my top one would be choline.
Mm,
Um, choline is one of those things that our brain naturally produces. As we're talking right now, and you're comprehending what I'm saying, or the listener as well. Your body's actually releasing choline. So if you're able to consume it in a moderate dose, it's usually between 200 to 500 milligrams. Um, and you can pair it with caffeine. You don't have to pair it with caffeine, but it essentially speeds up our comprehension and how fast we're able to, take in words that we're listening to, or words that we're reading. That would probably be another one that I don't take on a daily basis. But if I have a heavy mental load, um, 500 milligrams of choline would definitely get me there.
yeah, I've taken it before. I really enjoy it. It's naturally occurring in eggs.
Hmm.
Great for the brain if you eat a ton of eggs. But this is a class of health and wellness that I don't talk about as much. This like optimization nootropic world, but I love it. And so to anybody who's curious about whether you struggle with focus or energy, of course, if you're not sleeping well, you're putting a band-aid on a gunshot wound. If you're not eating
Exactly.
well, band-aid, gunshot wound. But if you got those things taken care of for the most part, not only is it helpful, it's just kind of fun to play around with this class of nootropic. And if you're like me and you either did take Adderall or you struggle with focus and you don't want to take stimulants and amphetamines, I think people sometimes undersell or just are unaware of the power of some of these nutraceuticals. Like some of them really work well, but they don't
Absolutely.
provide
Absolutely.
crazy negative side effects like the come down of an amphetamine. So if you guys are interested in learning more about focus and nootropics for energy and mental productivity and clarity, I would urge all of you to do it. And especially if you struggle with it, toying around with choline, lion's mane, all kinds of different nootropic mushrooms,
Mhm.
caffeine, it can make you a productivity powerhouse if you pair it right and do it right.
Exactly. And I feel like when we talk about herbs and versus amino acids versus nutrients, all of them kind of run in a separate class across the board. But we're especially talking about focus and productivity. Lion's mane, is a herb that helps a lot with memory recognizance and cognitive decline. There's been studies that help show that it helps with uh, certain forms of Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
Um, and then as opposed to things working more immediate, like the ginkgos and the choline in terms of choline activation in the brain and blood flow to the brain. There's, like you said, if you pair it correctly, you could have a productivity powerhouse. But I think I try to speak on what can be useful today, and not just, oh, this is great, this is great, this is great, because after a while it's like, well, dang, how many supplements can I take?
Yeah. Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
so I try to kind of keep it down to a base. But I mean, there are so many herbs that derive from different parts of the world that all have the same use. And I think now with today's, I know, kind of not veer off the path, but I'm trying to bring it back around. Today, with our accessibility to everything, I feel like that's where we kind of get overwhelmed with all the information on these different supplements and nutrients. Um, if which is my opinion. I don't know if this is proven or not, but my opinion on as to why is, um, God is a master planner, right? And at some point in time, all these weren't accessible at all at once. You had different things grown in different regions of the world. You had access to different things because, some people live in the mountains, some people live in the plains, some people live close to the ocean. I can give you an example. So sea moss has a wide plethora of vitamins and minerals. They'll say close to 82 or 86. In the same category, bee pollen has the exact same. Also, shilajit. Shilajit's in the mountains. Sea moss is close to the water. Bee moss you'll find in the plains. They all have very similar functions, very similar chemical makeup, but they're all grown in different parts of the world. So
Wow.
if someone asked me today which one is better, none of them are better. They all serve the same purpose, but now that we have access to all of them, people think, oh, well, these are all, I need all of them. You don't technically need all of them. You need whichever one serves you best, whichever one you can take most consistently. So I think that's kind of the issue we run nowadays in the supplement industry is everybody's trying to convince you what's better. And to be honest, it's more so about what serves you the best and
Hmm.
what's pure, what's potent, and what is, clear in terms of I guess their intention in terms of how it helps you and if it's
Yeah.
factual.
Yeah. It ultimately comes down to being, this is where the hard ambiguity comes in. I talked about this on a podcast I was on recently. The difficulty in this is in becoming a self-starter, meaning figure out what is wrong with you and what you're trying to, or what you want to improve upon. For me, it was
Hmm.
focus and mental clarity, and then begin to sort of whittle your way down into a few supplements that you think would work to help treat those things, assuming your diet, training, and recovery is on point. The big rocks are
Hmm.
in place. You can start to play with these little rocks of optimization. And I could take, ginkgo, or I could take alpha GPC, or I could take L-tyrosine or choline. I could take, but they all serve a similar purpose. So in reality, it's just a matter of what's accessible to me, that's potent, third party tested for purity, and that I can
Hmm.
consistently put in my body. That's a really great way to put it. So to that point of avoiding the informational overload, what are your foundational supplements? Like, what are the things you're putting in your body every day consistently?
Um, Creatine, you kind of get two forms for that. You get brain and body fuel. It's not just for bodybuilders. Creatine supports cognitive health, ATP production, mood stability in women, older adults, athletes. It benefits all. I say everybody from of age to your grandmother should be taking creatine, and I mean that. I've put more older individuals on creatine in the past year than kids, which are not kids, but adolescents, which are in competitive sports, and
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they benefited just as much or even more from the cognitive side. Um, D3K2, those are basically the calcium commanders. The D3 boosts immune hormone health. K2 ensures that calcium gets deposited into the bones and not the arteries, because that synergy matters. Magnesium, I'm a glycinate guy. Nervous system regulator, it's crucial for over 300 enzymatic reactions inside the body. I could talk about magnesium for a whole nother hour, but
No, bro, you
sleep,
and I are the
stress, blood
magnesium
sugar,
marshals, man.
right.
I'm on it. Like, glycinate in the evening, 3 and 8 in the morning. I'm on that shit regardless.
Exactly. But sleep, stress, blood sugar recovery, it touches all of them. Omega-3 fatty acids, that's basically the inflammation antidote, cardiovascular health, brain function, hormone harmony. You're either fighting inflammation or you're feeding it at the end of the day. So having something at your core value that's constantly fighting inflammation is critical. And it doesn't have to be fish.
Mm-hmm.
There's black seed, chia seed, flax seed with F, that all carry the omega-3 compounds of EPA and DHA.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I would say a whole food multivitamin. Basically, it's gonna be from basically what it sounds like. It's multivitamins formulated from food, not synthetic sources. Um, you know, Modern agricultural practices, our soils depleted. That's no secret. Diets are stressed. Having a formulated multi is going to fill in the gaps and lay the foundation. Um, and I feel like as long as you are, like I said, you're taking care of the big rocks, having that little rock to fill in the gaps is a game changer.
Do you have an example of a whole food multivitamin? I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Ooh, um, I'd say probably one of my favorites is the Source of Life. It's by Nature's Plus. That would be a pretty good example of a whole food multivitamin that's in adequate doses. The problem is you're not taking one pill. There's no way to get, because it's basically dried fruits and vegetables. You have to get it in a powder or a liquid. That's the only way you can get it in an adequate dose. Um, there are pills out there, but just keep in mind that your diet's probably gonna have to be, more dialed in, because you're getting bits and pieces. You're not really getting your daily recommended dose or an adequate dose of any of those nutrients. Um, I think that's why I lean more towards selling individual nutrients as opposed to doing multivitamins. We are formulating multivitamin. It's just been a process, because it's something that is hard to get in adequate dosages without it being, a powder that tastes really bad or
Yeah.
liquid that tastes really bad.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm curious, what criteria should people be looking out for when they're going to purchase a supplement? Like, what are you looking for to see that is worth its weight in salt? I would recommend that to somebody.
Um, if you're in a store, I would say third party tested, of course, and that, that could be from several third parties, but the two most reputable is going to be the USP or the NSF, and that just means that they have gone through testing that shows that what is on the label it actually contains. Um, the next would be formulations, kind of knowing what is the most optimal formulation. If you're getting a B vitamin that's not methylated, that's not really an optimal formulation. So that's a simple chat GBT question. I'm shopping for X. What is the most optimal formulation? And it'll give it to you, pretty in less than 30 seconds. I don't want to muddy the water too much, but I'd say at the basics, I'd say those two. Online's a little bit different, because with the popularity of supplements in this day and age of social media, there's companies that will say the right things but not do the right things. So I
Mm,
feel like if any company is making a um, off the wall claim in terms of that supplement itself can change XYZ, and not kind of give you a kind of bring it back down to earth, and give you, and of course with diet supplementation, or it's just this supplement alone has helped XYZ, and they're not talking about anything else beforehand. Um, I would just say stay far away. I mean, they're getting really really creative with the marketing, and pretty packaging and colors and who's talking about
100%.
it, but um, at the end of the day, I still think quality matters, and it makes no sense to be taking a supplement for inflammation it could be giving you inflammation. Um, Proprietary blends is another thing to stay away from. It can say proprietary blend on the back. If every single item or ingredient is not listed out, you don't know what you're taking. It could say proprietary blend, this 1,000 milligrams, and it has 20 different ingredients. You're getting, maybe, if they split it equally, you know, you're getting maybe 50 milligrams of each ingredient,
Yeah.
which
Proprietary blend is a
doesn't do
fancy way to
much.
say we can put however much of whatever we want in this thing and just tell you it's in there. Like Bang
Exactly.
energy drinks say they have creatine, but I promise you it's not an effective dose of 5 to 10 grams of creatine in every drink. It's the Wild West with supplements, man. It's not regulated by the FDA, so these people can
Hmm.
say and do a lot of whatever they want. So I appreciate you mentioning that criteria, because it is incredibly important for people to know. You want line item formulation. You want everything listed out with its dosages. You want third party tested by the NSF, or what was the other organization?
The USP.
The USP.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. And you want optimal dosages, meaning if you want creatine, you need to make sure you're able to get 5 to 10 grams of creatine in the creatine supplement you choose to purchase. So make sure it is a clinically effective dose. And you're pretty convicted on this stuff, so much so that you built
Hmm.
your own brand. You built Prosper, right? Prosper Wellness,
Correct.
correct?
Correct.
So being in the supplement industry for a decade, what what was the boiling point for you that you just decided, I'm going to do this myself? I'm going to build this. in the vision I think it should be in?
Um, I think a lot of it started in terms of starting Prosper was when social media started to take off, and I was doing basically supplement consultations. I was helping people put together a supplement regimen based off of their ailments that they were having, and I kept running into the problem that one company would have one thing, or it wouldn't have enough or optimal dosing of one thing, and I'm just cherry picking, when it comes across the board. And I can see how that became really frustrating to me. So it was also very frustrating for a customer, which would have to go to two or three different stores plus Amazon to get everything they needed. Um, and it shouldn't be like that. The supplement industry is $1 billion industry. These companies are making profits hand over fist. Um, if you can't provide something quality, you shouldn't be able to, in my opinion, be in an industry which you're claiming to help people, when you're not. I just call a spade a spade. If you're selling something that has no efficacious dosing, you're not helping somebody, and that's you're taking advantage of someone else's weakness, which I personally just didn't can't get with. So um, that's where I decided, if no one else is going to do it, I'll do it myself. Um, and the goal for me is to just kind of uh, make noise, go against the grain, offer something that if someone truly does want quality, transparency, and something that someone truly cares about and cares about them, I have the option. I'm not holding a gun to anybody's head and saying come purchase from me, but the option is there. And the prayer is that other companies follow suit, and they don't make me an outlier,
Yeah, I
because
love that.
ultimately it's just something I'm passionate about, and I've been a part of for a decade. So I love the industry. I love um, the science of formulations, and what it can do, and how it can possibly affect and change someone's life. But I feel like there needs to be rules, regulations, or a standard in place.
I've been taking your maca and beetroot before the gym, bro. I love it. It's good stuff. It's good stuff for blood flow. Let's just say that. Let's just say, oh, this is all we're
Yeah,
gonna say. It's
it's
good for blood flow.
it's
I love the way you promote some of your products with these just hilarious statements before you like drop like what something you should take for do this. It's like, if you want an absolute dump truck, take creatine. If you want
right.
crazy blood flow everywhere, take this maca and beetroot. It's very funny and original, but it's also, I mean, it can't be without its challenges. Like you have stood up a successful brand in one of the most saturated, lawless, challenging, unethical industries in the world. Frankly, what's been the hardest part of getting Prosper off the ground and thriving?
Um, I think a part of the hardest part is I guess showing proof,
Mm.
which will come over time. I've always told my staff, I didn't want to be a flash in the pan company. There's several ways to make a quick buck, but a quick buck isn't going to make you, last. And I feel like that also kind of plays onto the word, plays onto the name of the company. I created Prosper Wellness because I was really done watching people chase symptoms, while staying sick. And like you said, the supplement company is flooded with low integrity products, cheap ingredients, fancy branding, and empty promises at the end of the day. So I think if the work will prove that we built something clean, something clinically effective, something that stands on principle, um, NSF certified, organic when possible, no seed oils, BS fillers, contradictions, and I feel like integrity at the end of the day is a long man's game. So um, I I think with my experience being in the industry, I've seen a lot of companies crash and burn off of hype. Um, so I knew that if I could just kind of weather the storm and continue to put out the message, more people would just kind of the proof is in the pudding. People
Mm.
would see that this isn't just something I'm trying to get a buck off of. This stuff actually works, and that'll bring more.
When you made the decision to launch Prosper and you said, I'm going to do this, was it scary? Did it feel like a big risk? Was it a big risk? I mean, or was it a very calculated, this is going to work, I've got the plan, I'm ready to roll? Or was there a degree of, we're going to build the plane as we fly it here?
I was definitely building the plane as we fly. I think I started started packing orders in my kitchen. Um, I feel like it was definitely a leap of faith. I went from just making money strictly off social media to, okay, I have a few followers asking me to just make what I'm talking about myself. Um, the research, the product development, going to the manufacturing sites, collaborating with our labs and our scientists to make my vision truly was the 2 year process. So it it was definitely a leap of faith. It was definitely something that I had saved up a decent amount of money from influencing, and I feel like that was what I used as my down payment. We're still a company that doesn't use any outside funding, because
You
I
bootstrapped
didn't
the
want to
whole
be
thing?
bought. hmm
Wow. I didn't know that.
I and it's not always true for individuals, but I feel like your morals can be compromised if you owe someone money, which was something that I feel like at the time I felt like it was something I was called to do, and if I failed, it was because of I heard wrong.
Got the wrong message, but it
But
sounds like it's thriving.
exactly, exactly. So,
Well,
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was going to ask what the biggest lesson you've learned from building it is. Like, what's the biggest takeaway you've had from building a brand like this in such a crazy ass industry?
Oh, man, I think still learn lessons every single day. But one of my favorite verses is Hebrews 1:11, which is basically, faith is the substance of things hoped for and evidence of things not seen. And that verse just changed how I move. Not only in a business aspect, but you can apply it to fitness wherever. But faith really is, isn't just believing. It's building before you see the outcome. So I feel like in anything you have to move like something's already yours. And fear thrives on in vagueness. So if you're unclear, it's not just okay, I see this, I'm gonna move. It's writing things down, making it very crystal clear in terms of what you're going to do. You may not have the steps of how you're gonna do it, but if you write those things down, um, your faith will start to fill in those gaps. So I feel like that's probably been my biggest lesson is leaning into that, and um, realize that faith is not passive. It's the most actionable force in my life.
Being that Hebrews is such a strong verse for you and faith is such a strong pillar of your life, both in yourself and in God, do you do you still struggle with self-doubt or some degree of imposter syndrome when it is working?
Absolutely. Every day. And I actually saw a piece of content that you made, about basically evidence, and if you feel that you don't have enough evidence, which is true. Um, but I feel like even despite having evidence, there's still a degree of, you're moving at, I know with me personally, I'm moving at such a fast pace. There's still a degree of, is this really, am I still hearing the right message? I feel like every day
Yeah.
there's two prayers I pray is, you God lead me on this path, and two, if the path changes, tell me. So I'm still someone that's very apprehensive, and I think that the struggles of an imposter syndrome is something that, like you said, you just need to find and gain more evidence in terms to why you've been called to do this thing.
Yeah, and ultimately it comes for me from continuing to reach and like take the step that feels fearful, and then you go, "Oh, I can't believe I ever worried about that thing." And then a new thing comes up where you're like,
hmm
"Ugh, that frightens me to do." And you act in faith. And it's important, I think it's important to hear that people like you that are so well established and doing so many cool things and have, at a surface level, right, all this success. Someone goes to your socials, they go, holy shit, is an owner and founder. He's got a massive social media following. He's an authority figure. And they probably see the same for me. But I also wake up every day and wonder sometimes, why me? Am I doing this right? Is this where I'm supposed to be headed? What about me makes this work? Like I've got something I've been avoiding, and I posted a photo on it on TikTok. I just posted a selfie because I've been terrified to step into it, but I felt called to do a speaking tour, like a few cities, go and
Hmm.
speak to people. And when I've done meetups and mini versions of that, the turnout's been insane. And so I have a little bit of proof, but it's scared me to think about putting out in the universe that this is the thing I'm going to do. You know, the fear of, what if nobody shows up? What if the tickets don't sell? What if this is all a flop? But by acting in faith, you build a little piece at a time through whether it was bootstrapping your brand or releasing a new supplement, wondering if it's going to sell, and then it
Hmm.
crushes. You have these things that when you continue to move in faith and step on the stone, though it's not totally clear, you reinforce and you go, huh, I can't believe I ever worried about that. How silly. And then something else comes up that challenges your degree of faith you are willing to have in yourself. And it's this never ending cycle. But I think the differentiator with someone like you and someone who doesn't is that you take the step anyway. You step into it despite it being scary,
Exactly.
despite the imposter syndrome. You do the simple, not easy thing and continue to move through the tension of uncertainty.
Exactly. And I wanted to ask you, along with imposter syndrome, we once you kind of get that dopamine hit of a mass following or videos that do large views, building your brand, how have you balance authenticity with the need to appeal to a broader audience? Because once you get that little hit, you're like, okay, well, more people need to hear my spiel. So
Yeah.
how do you
And
balance that?
yeah, I mean, I think it's natural for us to want to. I mean, it happens to me. Like I'll have videos that are obscure, really, really pop off, and then videos that I think will do well pop off. So I don't necessarily have it perfectly figured out, but when you see something crush, you think, oh, I need to make more of that. That's what's working.
Hmm.
But my dad said to me a long time ago, every time we'd hit this follower milestone, because my dad was very invested in my success. He thought this was the coolest thing ever. Like there was never
That's
any
amazing.
ego. He was so supportive of me, and I'm very grateful for that. And it's enabled me to take more risk because he instilled that belief in me. But at 100,000, 500,000, a million, he would always say the same thing. He would say, I remember when you called me and I was sitting in the parking lot in my car in South Florida. This is him talking. And you said, Dad, I have 100 followers on TikTok. I can't believe 100 people care what I have to say. And he said, never, ever lose sight of that. The reason those first 100 people followed you is going to be the reason a million people follow you. And so I remember that. I remember that conversation with him. And I remember that he would also say, if you help just one person every day, that is so much more than so many people will do in their day. And so if I can help just one, and I remember what the messages that made me want to help just one, I can stay rooted in my authenticity. And I can also know that what's gotten me here to the platform size I'm at is the degree to which I'm willing to step into being myself and being vulnerable. Like those two
Hmm.
things, every time I've done them, though they like kind of suck on the front end to talk about, my dad's dying, my dad's sick, my dad passed, like very personal aspects of my familial life. Every time I've
Hmm.
done that, the God and the universe and people have returned back with so much abundance and favor. And so I think it's easy to get caught, like you said, in the inertia of internet virality and that super speed dopamine. But I always come back to center. Like what got me here? What got me here was listening to the message that God placed on my heart. And it is not the viral video, it is whatever is on my heart at the time. And that might mean it's not the video that pops. Like it just might be the case. But
Right.
I know if I continue to act in what's true, it just moves me through my purpose even more so, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's powerful. That makes perfect sense. And I think I feel the same way. I kind of had those moments where you're like, man, I can't believe I still have it. I can't believe people care about what I had to say.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't
Why
think I'll
why
ever.
us? Why us? I truly think that sometimes.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't think it'll ever be, a place where I feel like, oh, I've earned this because I truly don't feel, you know, like it was something that I don't feel like the things that I'm saying are profound, but I also am speaking from, you know, what I feel like is being spoken to me. Um, and I think that's the only way to move at the end of the day.
I agree. And being open to that message and that movement changing. Like I have a guy that I work with, a coach of sorts, if you will. His name's Kian Lagi. He works with high performing people all over the world. And
Hmm.
you probably love him, honestly. He's a great guy. And what he talks about is like the calls we hop on, the sessions is for keeping me centered in the noise of what's going on in our career, right? It's easy to get carried away. And he said, so long as you can keep yourself and we can keep you in these sessions clear to the message, like what is the message God is placing on your heart, listening to it and trusting yourself enough to allow it to change. Because if, recently I haven't felt as convicted to make fitness content, I felt more convicted to make mindset, public speaking, my view on life and adversity. That's what I feel convicted to do. But there's a little bit of fear because so much of my business and success has been built on my base of knowledge around health and fitness. And so it's
Hmm.
creating a friction within me transparently of like, I've got this really flourishing business for fitness coaching and fitness content, but I don't feel as convicted to speak on it anymore. And that leads to uncertainty of like, well, if my message changes, how's the business going to change? How's the income going to change? And it's that tension. He always also says there can be no ascension without tension. And I love that
Hmm.
phrase. It's that tension of stepping into what feels true in our hearts at the time and being open to that message changing and trusting God that it's carrying you in the right direction. I also don't always practice it, but I try. I fail every day, but I get a little closer, you know?
No, absolutely, absolutely.
Well, man, Justin, I'm grateful that you stepped on. Really, man, it's a cool moment, a surreal moment for me as someone who's admired your stuff for a long time. I appreciate you taking the time out of your afternoon to come on and chat with me, and I know the listeners are going to get a ton of value out of this, of not just getting practical, but really getting optimal with carrying out supplementation and practices in your everyday life. So I want to thank you for stepping into this and sharing your knowledge with me and with us. Where can the people find you? Where's the brand? Where can they find Prosper? Where can they find your socials?
For sure. So, the brand they can find on TikTok and Instagram is PRSPR Wellness. You'll find that also as our website, just add.com at the end. My Instagram handle would be jkelly6 underscore. TikTok handle is train with JK. Um, and man, honestly, before we hop off, it's been a pleasure. Like I said, I'm a huge fan. I've been watching your growth. And I think the first time we had a conversation, still everything that I said rings true. Um, everything that you bring to the public is inspirational, and I can tell it's deeply genuine and honest. And it's an absolute blessing to just sit here and conversate with you. So thank you for having me on. And I feel like we covered quite a bit, but my prayer before we hopped on was that we just help one person. So whether it reaches the millions or just one person, I feel like what was said today was ultimately God's purpose. So
Yeah.
yeah, just thank you for having me on.
Well, given we shared that sentiment, I didn't know you prayed that prayer. Sounds like it worked out just fine. Sounds like the big man had a plan for us, and we did that, man. So,
Yeah,
I appreciate you as well, and I appreciate the kind words. To everybody listening, make sure to drop a comment. Let us know what you thought of the episode. Follow the show if you're on Spotify, and subscribe to the channel if you're on YouTube, so we can get this message out to more people. And we'll see you in the next one.